Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nesbitt Connection podcast. Love having you here, and of course, I love being with you. And I want to point out too that this is so cool having so many people on YouTube. Great to have the support there, and of course, I great love hearing from you. I want to share something with you that I mentioned. I guess it would be maybe my last podcast about how. I've got this. You can't imagine how much time I spend lying in bed just thinking about what it is. Why can't we attract people? Why are nobody coming to work in the construction industry? Why does nobody want to be a mechanic anymore? Why is it nobody wants to be a plumber anymore? There's jobs out there, even in the hospital, for example, you can't get an RPN. Our daughter is a registered nurse at the hospital, and she's so she's a registered nurse, but she's also in charge of the education on the floor. So she's got a pretty good responsibility there, and it's a big job, a lot of stress. They can't get nurses. So why is it that we can't get people? The crazy thing is that I read a book here not long ago, and I'm not going to name the book because I don't want to. I'm not here to bash anybody, but I was at a leadership conference, and the guy spoke pretty good, and I thought, hey, I'm going to buy his book and get his book. And let's just say I got home and the book was somewhat disappointing. Let's just say that. And I think the difference is, and you've heard me say this before, is there is a difference in the people who take a shower before work and they take the shower after work. And this is certainly a person who I would consider one of the elites, went to the very fancy university, doesn't speak my language, doesn't speak the language of, we'll say, the industry that I work in, doesn't make him a bad person, just doesn't speak the right language. And of course, I remember I remember at about page 75, I kind of thought, hey, look, I just can't finish this book. It's just so awful. But needless to say, I kept going through, and I finished the book. And the reason I mention this is that even though the book was, we'll call it underwhelming, I still took some stuff out of there that I think is really important. And one of the things is that this gentleman made reference in this book about how with computers you've got such a thing as you've got the hardware, which is actually the computer itself, and of course you've got the software that runs the computer. The computer is not going to run without the software. And let's just say if the software isn't working right, it's going to screw up the computer. And I get that, and a lot of people do. We never stop to kind of correlate how this software works with the hardware with how our soft skills work with the people doing what you'd call the hard jobs. We hear it all the time about how, this person yelled at me, I get no respect, I get no appreciation. I love asking the question when I get in front of a group, when was the last time you gave appreciation, or when was the last time you received appreciation? I know what it's like to be in a room for maybe 10, 12 people ask this question, when was the last time you felt appreciated? And the room goes silent. The room goes silent. Nobody can think of a time that they felt appreciated. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. If we show a little bit of appreciation, it goes such a long ways. And I think one of the things that I see people struggle with is some of this stuff. If you're going to be a leader and you're going to lead people, my experience has been is some of the stuff that we'll say is so simple that works, people think it's beneath them and they don't want to try it. I see it all the time. If somebody thanks me or does something, or rewards me in a certain way, I'll bend over backwards. And you got to remember, what gets rewarded gets repeated. What gets rewarded gets repeated. If somebody does a good job, you got to take the time and say, hey, look, and you got to be specific about the jobs. Hey, look, what you just did here is beautiful. Nobody else can do it the way you did. You are awesome. Thank you so much. It's amazing how simple that is. I tell you what, I was at a precast plant here. I guess maybe it was this summer. And I do a lot of work with the lead hands and the foremen at several precast plants, and I really enjoy working with these guys and girls because they're the salt of the earth. They're the ones that make it happen. Without them, there's no work being done. And the thing is that they kept saying about this new guy they hired. He's so good. I went out to the plant, put my hard hat on, the work boots on, went out to the plant, and I said, are you happen to be, I think the guy's name was Dave. I'm testing my memory here, but I said, are you Dave? He said, yeah. I said, look, I've heard a lot of good things about you. I said, I work with the leadership team here, and I said, I've heard so many good things about you. You got a great future here. That was on a Friday, And he turned to me and he says, you know something? He says, you just made my weekend. He said, nobody has ever told me that. That didn't cost me any money. It wasn't hard to do. I didn't even have to rehearse it. I just, hey, look, I've heard a lot of great things about you. We all have the ability to do that. We all have the ability to do that. I've seen stories and I've lived them, and I hear stories all the time. I heard a story here not long ago, but they said the owner drove through the yard the first time in 4 months. He drove through the yard. And I said, oh, really? I said, what do you have to say? Nothing. Wouldn't talk to us. Pretty simple. But like I say, for some reason, the simple stuff we seem to miss because it's so simple. And that's the part that I find just somewhat fascinating. It's just simple stuff. Not only that, we got to be reminded about it. And not only that is that, we don't want to wait. If somebody does something, we got to do it now. Reward them now. I'll give you an example. In my past life, I used to have to do employee evaluations, and I think it started once a year, and then it got to be every 6 months. I have mixed feelings about them, and the funny thing is that I'll give a classic example. I'm just thinking this as I'm talking here. When the company first talked about bringing these employee evaluations in, I was a cheerleader for them like you wouldn't believe. And the only reason that I was a cheerleader for them is because I didn't know where I stand. I did not know where I stood with this company. I didn't know if they appreciate me. Am I doing a good job? I got a future here. I thought they were wonderful for that reason. But and again, I'm not here to pick on a leader, but if the leader was doing the job, effectively, I wouldn't have had that feeling. And I'm not here to pick on the person. It's just it's the way I see it. And the thing I find most troubling with it, because I'm a father, I've got 2 beautiful daughters that are both very successful, and I'm very proud of them. You heard me mention it before, how proud I am of them. But I can promise you that my wife and I, when we were raising these girls that turned out so good, we never sat down with them and had an annual evaluation, nor did we sit down every 6 months and have an evaluation. If we thought one of them was slipping, we were pretty quick to point it out to them. And not only that is when they did something good, we're really quick to point it out. I don't know that there's ever a time that I have seen my girls that I haven't told them, 1, that I love them, and 2, that I'm proud of them. So like I say, I'm really good at telling them that. And the thing is, it just doesn't cost me any money. And I see the smile on their face, and I tell them that, and they're in their 20s. That just stuff's pretty simple, but some reason we miss it. And then, we got asked, why are we bringing people into the industry? And not only are we having a hard time bringing people into the industry, but the thing that somewhat troubles me is that we're so desperate for people, we'll take anybody. And of course, when you take anybody and we bring somebody in who possibly could have a bad attitude, guess what? They affect the rest of the team. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing that will upset a team more than bringing somebody in who underperforms, doesn't perform, doesn't show up for work, just doesn't, not part of the culture, and the leaders allowing it to happen. Because, of course, then everybody just kind of goes down to that level. So I think we really need to, I've seen it before, and I often say to people, especially when there's, we'll say, heavy equipment involved, if we're bringing somebody on a $500,000 machine, and they're not going to service it, and they're going to destroy the machine, they cost you $100,000. What have you saved by running that machine by accepting, somebody who didn't do the job? Now, the flip side of that is that for some reason we bring people in and we never discuss with them. I remember I'll give you a good example. When I was a kid, like I'm going to tell you, I might have been maybe. I don't think I was 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. I was not very old, okay? And my dad, you've heard me mention before, he had a gravel business, and I used to be pretty handy on a loader when I was young, okay? So I was quite young. I was very good in a loader. But before I knew how to operate a loader, I was made to grease it first. I had to change the oil. And again, I'm only 13, 14 years old, and I'm doing this. You couldn't make these stories up today. And to tell young people today, I think you're crazy, but it's the truth. This is how it happened. And the crazy part about it was that, it's a small community. It was not uncommon for me to have somebody come in the morning. They'd start at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and I would have to go and show them, one, how to operate the loader, how to grease the loader and everything. And I would go to school that day, and I'd be in school with the with this person's kids. And this was pretty cool. And of course, when you're my age, it's bragging points to do that, right? But I'm just saying, when somebody would come in, I would show them, this is where you grease it, this is how many pumps you grease it, this one you do twice a day, this one you do once a week. And I showed them. I spent the time up front showing, this is what, when you come here to work, this is what we expect of you. This is how you do it. Nobody does that today. When was the last time you heard of, say, an excavator operator being brought onto a job site, working for a company, and you go through the maintenance manual with them and say, hey, look, this is, where you grease it, this is how often you check the oil, and, this is where you put the hydraulic oil in. I'll tell you what it's like. I heard not long ago about a company where somebody put, it was, I believe, hydraulic oil in the diesel fuel tank, or vice versa. Needless to say, it cost the company a fortune. We got to do the training up front. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've had it happen to me, where I've had operators come in that they say they know how to operate a loader, and they lied. They lied. They didn't know the first thing about a loader. So if we bring somebody in, we have to make sure and do our part up front, show them this is how it's done. This is what we expect of you. This is our culture here. This is how we do it. We respect our equipment. And the thing is, if we don't respect our equipment, it costs us thousands of dollars. And if it costs us thousands of dollars, we're not in business anymore. So we'd like to be in business so we can make sure that you're around and you have a great career here and you can provide for your family. And we got to tell them that. Not only that, we got to tell them often. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to share that with you. And of course, I respect your time. So I'm trying to keep these podcasts maybe a little shorter, just because I want to make sure I don't burn up too much of your time. Everybody's busy. Look, thanks so much for being here. Have a great day.